Ever feel like your mind is in a constant tug of war? We're diving deep into the wisdom of Zen Master Zhijie to get to the heart of a conflict that runs our lives, that endless pull between having and not having. You know? How do we find any real inner peace when we're caught in the middle of all that? Well, let's find out. So, Zen Master Zhaju kicks things off with this really simple but profound idea. It seems like our whole world is built on this split, right? On one side, we have existence, we cling to the things we have, our jobs, our identity, life itself. And on the other side, we have non-existence, this emptiness that we're terrified of, losing what we have, or maybe even the idea of the void. And that creates this constant grinding tension inside us.
I mean, just think about it for a second. We spend so much energy trying to build up a solid life, a solid sense of self. That's the existence side of the pole. But at the same time, we're kind of haunted by this fear that it could all just vanish. And that's the non-existent side. This constant swing back and forth is where so much of our anxiety comes from. But what if this entire conflict is just based on a huge misunderstanding?
To even begin to solve this puzzle, we have to get a handle on what Zen Master Zhuzhu actually means when he talks about emptiness. And I'm willing to bet it's not what you think it is.
Okay, so here's the absolute key. True emptiness does not mean a big black hole of nothing. Not at all. It means that nothing, and I mean nothing, not the chair you're sitting on, not your thoughts, not even your sense of you, has some kind of permanent, unchanging, independent core. Instead, everything is totally fluid and interconnected. It's not a void, it's a state of pure, limitless potential.
Now, this slide is fantastic because it clears up a super common mistake. People hear emptiness, and they immediately think of this dead void, what the text calls annihilationist emptiness. The master has this great, kind of funny metaphor for this wrong idea: tortoise hair and rabbit horns. I mean, these are things that are just absurd. They can't possibly exist. True emptiness, on the other hand, is completely dynamic. Think of it like the space inside a mirror. The mirror itself doesn't have an image, but because of that, it has the potential to reflect any and every image.
Okay, so if everything is empty, of some fixed, solid nature, then what is all this stuff around us? I mean, it feels pretty real, right? This brings us to the flip side of the coin, a concept called wondrous existence.
Wondrous existence is basically the world we see and touch and live in every single day. It feels real, it works, but the master says it's not solid. It only arises because of a whole bunch of other causes and conditions. It's described as a magical illusion, which doesn't mean it isn't there. It just means its reality is more like a rainbow or a reflection in the water. It's real, but it's not a permanent, solid thing. This right here shows the difference perfectly. Most of us, we tend to think of the world as a big collection of separate, solid things, kind of like statues. That's what the text calls fixed existence. But the Zen perspective sees everything as fluid and interconnected, more like reflections that are constantly changing. Nothing exists all by itself. So the big question is, how do these two ideas, this emptiness and this existence, actually connect? Well, the bridge that connects these two things that seem like total opposites is one of the most important concepts in this whole philosophy. It's called dependent origination. You can think of this as the engine that runs reality. A flower can't exist without sun and soil and water. A thought can't exist without a mind and a situation to think about. Absolutely nothing just poofs into being by itself. Everything is completely dependent on everything else. And this one single principle explains both emptiness and existence.
And this spills into this really beautiful, elegant piece of logic. Okay, so 1, because things arise from conditions, they exist, right? At least in a conventional way. 2, because they don't have a fixed, independent nature, they are fundamentally empty. Now here's where it gets a little mind-bending. 3, it is precisely because things are empty of a fixed nature that they can come into existence through changing conditions. I mean, if everything was solid and permanent, nothing could ever change or be created. And finally 4, because things arise from conditions, they are, by their very definition, empty of any separate self.
All of that logic leads to this one profound conclusion. We are not talking about two opposing forces at all. Emptiness is the very reason existence is possible, and existence is just the expression of emptiness. They're not fighting each other. They're in a perfect dynamic dance. And to make this crystal clear, Master Zhijie uses this powerful, just beautiful metaphor that perfectly captures this whole idea of non-duality.
I mean, that's just such a brilliant way to put it, isn't it? Think about the ocean. You see thousands of individual waves, right?
Each one has its own shape, its own lifespan. That's existence. But can you find a single wave that isn't made of water? Nope. The water is their shared underlying reality. That's the emptiness. So all the individual things in our lives, our thoughts, our emotions, our relationships, they're all just waves. They are real, they are temporary forms. But their essential nature, the water, is this interconnected, potential-filled emptiness. They're not separate. And when you really get this, you get non-duality. Okay, so this is a really fascinating philosophy. But how does it actually help us with, our day-to-day anxiety and suffering? This is where we shift gears from theory to practice, to Zen Master Zhizhe's actual path of cultivation. Let's look at how this understanding can really tame our minds. The text poses this very direct, very human question. It's basically asking for someone like us, someone who's trying to be better but is still full of all sorts of afflictions, what's the actual method? What do we do? And here's the step-by-step guide. First, you just recognize that your pain comes from mistaken ideas. Second, you start to take apart the biggest mistaken idea of all, that there's a solid, permanent me at the center of the universe. Third, you learn to see your body and your mind as just a temporary collection of processes. Fourth, and this is a tricky one, you realize that even that smart, intellectual understanding is just another concept you have to let go of. And finally, you just rest in a state of equality, realizing there's no separate me that needs to be saved and no separate nirvana out there to achieve. They're both just waves on the same water. And this is the ultimate payoff. When you truly deeply see that nothing, including yourself, is a fixed, separate thing, what's left to cling to? What is there to be afraid of losing? The whole foundation for attachment and anxiety just dissolves. You're not destroying the self, you're just finally realizing its true, fluid, interconnected nature. We'll end with this beautiful vision of what this understanding can lead to. It's a state where that boundary between you and the world becomes totally seamless. The mind isn't some little thing trapped inside your head. It's a vast field of awareness that contains everything. And the world isn't this separate, threatening place. It's the playground of that unobstructed mind. So the question isn't whether to choose existence or emptiness, but how to see that you are, and you always have been, both.